I'm Dr. Sarah Olivo.
And I'm Dr. Liz Seidler, and you're listening to College is Fine, Everything's Fine.
Guys, you are going to have an amazing experience with our next guest now. Someone with expertise, someone with hands-on knowledge, someone who can really talk the talk with the college students and high school students he's worked with. But mostly we're here today because he's got a hot wife. He's got a really hot wife. And she and I just had such a great conversation literally at a conference. And she was wearing this beautiful, bright pink blazer, and she just had this energy and style, and we would just chat on the bus to and from this conference, and I adored her. And then it turns out as we were talking, she's like, oh my gosh, you have a college podcast. You have to meet my husband. He is so great. And then she just began to sing your praises. So it was just like, hot wife, awesome husband, power duo. And I reached out to you and you were game. So without further ado, I think that you have more to say than just being the other half of this hot pair.
Wow.
Let's introduce, how would you like to introduce yourself?
I mean, she's going to love that.
Yeah.
I have to relay that introduction. That's the first characteristics. Okay. Thanks to my wife, I was able to make this connection. My name is Dr. Ifeanyi Onyejiji, or Dr. Onye, and I have been in education. I've been doing college counseling for over 12 years and getting to work with students directly, but also getting to work with systems and school districts as a counselor, as an administrator, as a speaker. And I also am a founder of an educational consulting company called Onye Speaks, where I make curriculum that helps students prepare for college, but also helps them develop holistically, right? It's not about just understanding the content, but it's about being able to thrive and be content with yourself, your college experience, and your future career, and the intangible skills that's involved, holistic development, and also doing it in an engaging way so students take ownership of their own journey. So that's what the kind of curriculum I make at Onye Speaks. So I'm happy to talk to you all on this great podcast.
And that's one of the things I love most after talking to you and getting to actually meet you in person was this idea that it's all about the whole student, and it's not really about the hustle culture that I think is a big part of what might be in the ether, and that it really is about the whole person, not just the how to succeed, how to take advantage, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, welcome.
Sarah, I'm glad that you crossed paths with your wife and we could have this conversation. You know, part of our mission is to we see so many college students that lack the proper skills to make the transition successfully to college. And that's for a lot of reasons: lack of resources, modeling, their community. And I know this is an area that you have a lot of expertise in. So maybe we could talk a little bit about where you see the importance of skill development. Of course, on our side of things, we're psychologists, and there are certain mental health skills that are really life skills. But then there's also these self-advocacy skills, which I also feel, I don't know what's happening in K through 12, but, you know, from not being able to go to office hours, write an email to a professor, advocate for writing support, or, you know, a lot of different things. So maybe you can speak a little bit about this kind of skill development toolkit, and what do you view as essential tools that students need, or having them might help the transition to university be better?
Yeah, first I got some tough news. It's not really prioritized in the K through 12 space. The kind of skill development you're referring to. The student has good grades, the student has good test scores, then they're college ready, right? So that's kind of where I kind of built the desire to have more holistic preparation, because technically they're eligible based off those grades and their test scores. But I've seen through my experience working with students in high school and through college, they can get in, but they're still struggling with the type of things you're referring to. Something like self-advocacy, right, is so important, right? The ability to say, I have needs, there are things that I want, take it that second level and say, who can help me? Where are the resources that I can get? And then the third level, I have the confidence. I believe so much in my needs that I got to go to that person. I got to go to that resource, right? When I've seen that students that have developed that, then it's not about what they're lacking as far as do they know the content? Did they lose their way with their major? They have the ability to go figure it out. And I tell my students, and I put in my curriculum that I provide to schools, is that this is as important as their proficiency in math and in science, right? And soft skills, in general are, all the skills that are essential for your life and your career that aren't related to a specific career or a specific topic. You talk about self-advocacy, talk about resilience, you talk about mental health skills, perseverance, these things, communication that you will use no matter where you go. So I know on the college side, there are a lot of college professionals who wish students had this going in to K through 12. However, unfortunately, it's not always prioritized. We got them the grades, they got this, they'll figure it out. But that figuring out, it can be bumpy for some students.
I think you're right, because so much of their time is curated when they're in K through 12. It's they have some choice, but ultimately it's pretty scheduled. It's there's not a lot of wiggle room in what kind of track you might take. I mean, it's like you go to classes from a certain amount of time in the day, and afterwards you play sports, and you've known the teachers for a long time. Your parents might have a relationship with this. It's like you have all these things sort of put into place, and so you go into this next step, and suddenly it's never been prioritized, or you might not have had to use it.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's been a lot of accommodation, et cetera, from teachers or schools or your community that have kind of almost helped, but really not helped because they've been doing the advocacy for you.
Exactly.
I also love how you took something like self-advocacy and you broke it down like there's 3 steps you need, right? Because it can otherwise sound like a really big word. One of the other reasons that Liz and I really wanted you on here is because we know that psychologists can sometimes have a lot of psychology speak. We tend to see people in small groups or one-on-one. We get some feedback here and there. And certainly in this podcast, we've really tried to have a wide audience. That said, we really wanted to get your educator perspective. What are the things that psychologists might miss when it comes, or maybe you've seen like, they have this lens, but it's helpful to think about this lens as well.
Yeah, so some students are going into college and they're experiencing things that they weren't prepared for in 12th grade and in high school. As I mentioned, if they got the grades, if they got the test scores, by a lot of, and not all, but a lot of school systems, they're college ready. So when they meet adversity, sometimes it's important to instill that confidence that it's okay, that you can actually maneuver past this. Say you got your first C or you got your first D. That's okay. What are you going to do to manage that? How are you going to remediate that situation? Your roommate situation isn't working out. So ideally, students will be prepared for certain obstacles. Are there students who maybe they're first generation college students? They have no one in their family to really explain how this is going to go. So the same obstacle that might happen when we're talking about the need for self-advocacy skills, mental health development skills, the same challenge that might come to them and their confidence completely drops because they don't really have anyone to talk to. No one can really instill that to them. So sometimes telling them this is okay, where some students were made to believe that if they are able to know math to this degree, know science to this degree, then they're going to thrive. But you're also going to thrive if you develop these sort of skills, right? And it's going to be okay. When you get to college, you should be making a resource map. Where are the resources on college campus, whether I need financial aid, assistance, whether I need career support, whether culturally I don't know where I fit in, maybe I'm underrepresented. Where are the places? Where are the clubs? How about you do that? Once you make an outline and you understand what type of needs you're going to have, that's going to build the confidence. And these are lessons that a lot of students are just learning on the fly. They're not being prepared for these type of conversations. So I think just instilling the confidence that it's okay. This may be, your first time being challenged in this regard. Like you said, they're getting a lot of things done for them in high school because administrators are afraid. We want to comply. We want them to reach this, where they really have to grow through their own exploration and their own challenges, too.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? Because there's one area where I know I'm not always as adept, and that's where maybe some learning differences, or some, a lack of certain classes or mentors, where that is interacting with self-advocacy. Do you find that there are certain, and maybe you can even put it in better words for me, but ways where those learning differences might be important to think about? I find that as a psychologist, I'm not always keeping my eye on what role that can play and could do a better job.
So another skill that's important is self-awareness. And that can be seen in a lot of different elements of how you learn, however you come to be, who you tend to hang with, what's your preference for studying. Hopefully by the high school side, those differences that you have come up, and some people have helped you to come up with strategies, or maybe you have to do it on your own. And that's why self-advocacy is so important, because once you leave high school, there's less people who are going to come find you and say, hey, I like to learn this kind of way. If it wasn't caught or if it wasn't itemized for you, then you have to go and talk to Sarah and Liz, or go online and find it. It's such an important skill. But I'm sorry, I got to go back to another point you made when you say you loved how I broke down self-advocacy, because it should be taught like that. It should be taught like you're teaching a subject. And you should be learning, this is first you identify your need, then you find your resource. What are ways to identify your resources? Because it's a skill, like in your example, that will transcend a lot of different problems you have, right? So if you have a learning difference and you had a self-advocacy, you will find your resources. You will be able to go to somebody, hey, this style isn't working for me. And they'll have to listen to you because you're going to make them listen to you, right? So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot about, I see a lot of college students in my practice that have to take a leave of absence, right? Like they're coming to see me because they're unsuccessful academically, emotionally, socially. And we know about the rates of like re-engagement after a leave of absence for a lot of students. They leave higher education, right? And then the challenges of having gaps in their learning. So what I'm always curious about, and a lot of parents come to me about this too, like, what can we do to get them in the best shape, right, before they go to school? So do you have, if you had to think of like your top 3 skills, if we're looking for college readiness, what would you throw out there?
So it's a dilemma that I think about on the K through 12 side as well. Where am I sending them off to? Do they have the resilience to persist toward graduation? If I had to say top 3 skills, a couple of them we've talked about, but I definitely believe self-advocacy is crucial. I definitely believe, and I definitely believe self-awareness, in the sense that there's multiple ways you can use self-awareness. To your point, when you start to understand what career, you may not know for sure what suits you as a person, that's something that is motivating, right? To your point about staying, persistent to graduation, when students are able to feel confident about their plan. And in fact, I've done research on this. When students are confident, not necessarily they know exactly what they want to do, but they're confident that they will find their path, they perform better in school and they persist longer. So that's something that can happen on the K-12 side. Not just the core subjects. Really, do you have an idea and a passion about where you can go and confidence in that? So, self-awareness, and that's called, and the other one, career self-efficacy or career confidence. These are important skills And they're different than just how good you are at math, how good you are at science. Do you feel you have confidence that you can find a career you want, that you can research that career, potentially find someone to talk to about that career? There's a whole area called career self-efficacy that are skills that when you develop these early, you're more confident and you're more likely to persist. So I just named a few: self-advocacy, self-awareness, career self-efficacy. I really believe motivational skills. What do you do when you get down?
Yeah.
Right? What do you do to remind yourself of your successes? That's motivating, because when things go wrong, I do this sometimes, we do this, things go wrong, you get that narrative that it's not going to work out. What about all the stuff you accomplished? What about how rare it was for you to even get into this school? Mm-hmm. Right? And then resilience as well. None of us have accomplished anything without some type of obstacles. What are your strategies when something doesn't go your way? Mm-hmm. When you didn't get that grade, you're confused about what career, what major you want to do. That roommate situation is just terrible. But what are your coping strategies? What are your resilience strategies? Those, to name a few, these skills could be taught like core subjects. And I think it will help students.
Absolutely. As you were talking about the steps needed for something like self-advocacy, it's A, B, and C. I'm thinking, you talk about math skills, but that started when kids, these days when they're 2, right? Yeah. And it's built upon, and I do think that people feel frustrated at times with themselves, like, oh, I don't have this skill set. I'm like, well, you have to remember the some of the things that you know through and through. 4 times 4 equals 16. And by the way, I had to kind of preview that in my head to make sure I was right. Like, that's
all good.
How long.
It's all good.
You built upon that over years and years. Like, it's okay to have this feel a little like you're like a baby giraffe walking on its legs for the first time. Because it hasn't been taught in that same way. And I think that's such a great educator approach to bring to this.
When you were just speaking about this, I was thinking a little bit about if students don't have access, which it seems like there is not a lot, to a curriculum or people in their community and their education system to kind of develop these skills, and don't have a resource like your consulting firm or the one area I was thinking that I think a lot of people get stuck around is thinking about how they can kind of find their path or their vision. And I really agree. If you don't have like a carrot at the end of the tunnel kind of to look for, it's really hard every day to kind of be undecided or not really passionate about what you're studying, knowing that that's your full-time job. So I'm wondering, like, how could somebody create some inflection points or kind of pursue, when you talk about this career self-advocacy, because this is an area that I think in other episodes Sarah and I haven't really talked about, and I think a lot of students I work with are kind of like, I don't know, I'll be an accountant because my dad is, or I'll go into STEM because I'll make tons of money, and they're kind of shooting arrows in the dark.
I think one of the important things when you talk about career self-efficacy, it's about confidence, because you could be wrong. You could think you could have an idea of what you want to do, and that could change as you navigate high school or college, and that happens to a few of us. However, when you're exposed to things like what I'm about to describe, exploration, when you're allowed to get a glimpse of what it's like to do a career or a job, when that's introduced to you, when someone speaks to you from that profession, and particularly maybe you can connect or relate to that person in some way, you start to believe that you have options, right? So it's not necessarily one particular. And then once you have that motivation, then you actually have someone explain, or you provide, or you on your own find the steps to reach them. That will take you till you persist, or you change your mind. Mm-hmm. Or you change your mind and you find new steps, but you have confidence. That was your choice to find your new path. There are many students who, like you said, I guess I'll do this, I guess I'll do that, but they're not driving themselves towards those decisions. And there's a big difference when students feel like they have the belief, the motivation, they have made reasons why they like that position, that role. And they are giving the information, or they're motivated to find it themselves. How do I reach that? That gives them something to drive for. Can I say one thing about a personal? I just realized a personal story. Okay, I'm gonna pause. So I'm gonna. I don't know. I'm gonna say this, and I believe that it connects to. Is that okay?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love
Okay.
Yeah, no, we
Love
love
personal
story.
stories.
Are you kidding?
Okay.
That's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
So, speaking of motivation, speaking of self-advocacy, I remember actually a student when I was counseling years ago, immigrated to the United States in the middle of high school, and that was tough. That's tough to do. Barely knew English. Was behind technically as far as being eligible for college, but this student struck me with their self-advocacy skill and their motivation. Was always talking to me, asking me so many questions. Anytime I had an event, anytime there was a college knowledge night or anything, they were there. They were asking questions. There were issues with this person's transcript. They had to take a few English language development classes, which was required, but they also wanted to take their college readiness classes. So we had to meet parents, them advocating that they get both. And long story short, this student, not because they came knowing all the content, not because they even knew what the college requirements, their tenacity, their advocacy, led them to college. That the student now has multiple degrees. Coincidentally enough, they're pursuing their psychology doctorate. So
That's right.
Yeah. So that actually, those kind of stories influenced me to say, how do we teach as much as, and I don't think anyone's figured it out completely, how do we prioritize it? Mm-hmm. Prioritize that motivation and advocacy, because it will make up for some of the content, lapses or anything like that. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that you also, something that you've said, but I think it's worth highlighting, is in this situation, it's not the goal. I think can feel like I have to figure out my career title. And what you've done so nicely through the research and these stories is to say, actually, great news, guys. You don't have to have that figured out. That's actually not the key. And I think that I imagine if I was a college student at the time and I had heard that, I would have felt a lot of the pressure just fall right off.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that gift to them.
Yeah.
Like if you just have the sense that you can figure it out and that you're going to know your next steps if something happens, or
Exactly.
that's
career self-efficacy. There.
Yeah.
It's not known for sure. Yeah.
Well, that also thinks about, then that question also comes to this idea of, you mentioned this story and you mentioned a few other students that you've worked with, or that you kind of a population you care about, which is the first generation college students, and that don't necessarily have what might be considered a roadmap to how you get into college, what you do there, that might be a bit more, feel more natural, for better and for worse, right? Because I'm not saying all those roadmaps are the right ones for that particular student. But I'm just curious, are there any specific challenges that you find or skills that you think help those first generation college students?
Yeah. So in everything we discussed, as far as college can be challenging, it can be great. College is fine, right? College is very fine. It could be challenging, and they make, skill development is important. But when you think of, for students who don't have anyone to tell them it's fine because they've never been through it, they've never gone there themselves, or maybe they're very, very underrepresented. Mm-hmm. So when this student hits the challenges, it can potentially reinforce a notion that maybe this isn't meant for me. I'm not supposed to be doing this. No, this was a sign like, I tried, and we need to get ahead of that, because this is something that it can happen. It's perfectly normal to feel that way, but it can happen if there's not a lot of examples of college success in your family or even in your community. So when that's the case, everything I've discussed is important. Having the career confidence that's going to propel you, but also learning how to combat imposter syndrome, which is feeling like you don't belong. And part of the ways to do that is always to champion your successes. Always to champion your successes. You did the work to get you to where you are, but it's a constant process, right? You are constantly reminding yourself when you hit these challenges. And the more you can kind of load that information before students enter college, the more they're prepared with tools and skills to say, hey, I know that I've been self-aware. I know I may need somewhere where I can feel like myself. So I've looked at the resources on my college campus. I know, hey, there's this club, there's this resource center. I'm going to need that. I'm prepared to know that imposter syndrome might be a thing. I'm prepared to know who I can contact to remind me, or the strategies I do to remind me of my wealth. And importantly, I have my vision. I have my career goals, and I'm confident in them. And that's going to propel me when I meet challenges or obstacles.
I would love there to be some way to, without invading people's privacy, give like an imposterism rating. Because the truth is, Liz, I don't know if you found this. We actually had a guest who wrote a book on imposter syndrome, but she says she rebrands it to imposterism because so many people experience a syndrome. Acts as if it's some difficult thing that people have that's that's atypical. And she's like, well, if everyone has it, and so you know, it's the same way that someone might say, oh gosh, I feel sad, but you know, I shouldn't feel sad because I don't really have it so bad. I technically have, you know, two parents, and someone else who might have only one parent might say, well, I can't feel too bad for myself because I've got one parent who's alive and I've got my health. And then someone who, you know, it's like there's so many ways for us to discount struggles. And I think that for people who are first generation who really do have significant things to overcome, they might not know that there are people who seem like they have it put together who have that exact same feeling. And so that's why I almost wish there was like a rating, like a battery level, but like for imposterism, and they like, wait, they feel like they're an imposter? What? I could normalize it for them.
That's so amazing, because one of kind of the, you know, symptoms of imposterism is that you feel like it's just happening to you. Yeah. Like we're all alone, which in fact, you know, we're all hiding insecurities, you know, every day. So that's, it's happening. Widespread for sure.
Right.
So much about what this whole entire time we were talking, I'm like just picturing like a roadmap and all these like cope ahead plans for all these things that I just feel there's such a need for. And the word that like kept coming back was about self-efficacy. And it's something I talk so much about the students that I work with, right? The whole point of behavioral therapy, and that's the type of therapies that we do, is that you learn a skill and then you're confident that you're going to be able to implement the skill and get a desired outcome. And I love that we had this whole conversation as applies holistically, right? In terms of like, not just in terms of mental health symptoms and how to regulate your mood effectively, but, I can develop a plan in terms of how to access student services and get support, or how am I going to approach the TA that's not really helping me with a class, or navigate getting a job on campus because I don't have financial resources, to cover things. So I'm so excited to hear more, and maybe you could speak a little bit more about you're out there and how can people find you and your work that you're doing. And I wish there was probably more of it happening. So I'd love to hear more about that.
I know, we need to like have a way to inject your knowledge
into all school districts.
Right.
No, I appreciate you. You can find more information about what I have available for schools and what I can do at OnyeSpeaks.com, ONYE speaks.com. And I'm passionate about what you just illustrated, Liz, and I providing resources, and also through professional development to staff and schools, helping them to prioritize it. Because I understand, because I come from college counseling, the priorities can feel very immediate, getting students to that next step to first graduate high school, then to college, and then, right? However, when we light that spark in students, when we provide that, and this is what I tell counselors, staff, and I provide in my curriculum that's directly for students, when you get them engaged and when you support them holistically, they have the tools to just take off. Mm-hmm. And that takeoff ideally is college, career, and beyond. And we got to get away, because students are smart, from this idea of just go to school, go to college, you're great. They know that just going to college can be harmful for some students.
Yeah.
If they don't have these coping strategies, right?
Right.
But no,
right.
college, great, good, you're good. No, they're peeping that, right? So we have to talk to them like, go to college, make sure you have a plan, make sure you're able to support yourself, your self-esteem, look out for this. If we have to start packaging it in that way, because they know, right? So this is kind of the message I hope to deliver and provide resources, because sometimes, okay, I want to do this. We're the resource to provide resources to help schools do that. And hopefully through K-12, we can talk about holistic, even if we're talking about preparing them for a life beyond them being in your school. Isn't that what we're supposed to do in education, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Right. We're setting them up for life, not for a job, right? It's 4 years of your life. College is 4-ish years of your life. And it's not it doesn't bookend, right? It doesn't end there. It's a parenthesis part of your life. It's a chapter. It's not the whole story. So I think that what I love is that a lot of the things you're talking about really work across your life. And I'm also going to take some of this
with our children.
I'm also a work in progress, Liz. I'm thinking myself like, maybe I should just write. I'm going to ask that person
we all are.
to do that.
No, I mean, so beautifully said. And I think ending this conversation, I feel more hopeful about, the 8th graders in my office that are dreading college already, or the college students that are dreading graduating, right? Because they get to these checkpoints and I think it really is a lack of skill development and like you said so many times today, confidence that, whatever speed bumps will kind of come their way, like, okay, I can navigate that, that this isn't something that I should be dreading.
Yeah. And I also find that when people have an accomplishment as the target, right, to figure out what their job is going to be or to get a raise or this, if that's all they're looking for, they hit that target and then the target inevitably moves.
Exactly.
And then they aren't happy because then they have to meet another target. And so these are things where you're saying like, this is a target that doesn't have to move. These are things that will always be with you and move with you so that you're not feeling like you're never getting to that next achievement step. How
do we want to set up our students to be content, to be happy and successful, right? Mm-hmm. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, your work seems to be a piece of that puzzle, and we're going to share the resources in our show notes. And thank you so much for coming on to talk to us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Say hi to your hottie.
She's gonna love that. I will. She's gonna take you.
She's smart too. She's got some brains. I should mention smart. That. Yeah. Turns out she also big brain.
Yeah. I'll sneak that one in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to our guests for sharing their stories and their advice. This podcast is for college students, and we want input by college students, so please reach out by text, email, or voice memo to collegesfinepodcast@gmail.com or 929-500-2231. Tell us your story, give us tips on topics you'd like to hear, or give us feedback about an episode.
Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Colleges Fine Podcast for episode announcements and resources. And last but not least, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast. Every hit of that plus button helps us keep going.